We very much appreciate being able to be here today to describe the Fertilizer Recommendation Support Tool, or FIRST. Specifically, what we would like to focus on is the relationship between land-grant partners and the PDI team, which is part of ARS. The core FIRST team is listed on this slide, and as you can see, it represents both land-grant faculty and ARS personnel. But the real strength of FIRST is based on our collaborations across the country. We have over 70 participants who represent 30 land-grant universities, 1 private university, 2 not-for-profit organizations, 1 state Department of Ag, and 2 federal partners, both the Natural Resources Conservation Service and the Agricultural Research Service. Some of our ARS colleagues also serve with the PDI team. So why are we developing FIRST? Soil test correlation and calibration and the recommendations associated with that research began in the mid-1950s. At that time, everything was done within states. And so there were many different soil test extractants developed for different states across the country and many different recommendations. Fortunately, over the years, the number of soil test extractants have coalesced into just a couple, and there's very good agreement across labs using the same soil extractant. However, recommendations across state lines are still very variable. And you can see that variation in this slide. This slide represents 6 southern states. They all use the same soil test extractant, Malic 3. And at a soil test phosphorus level of 0 parts per million, the recommendation rate for phosphorus is anywhere between 80 and 200 pounds per acre. That's a 120-pound difference. That difference isn't due necessarily to soil type or science. It's due to the philosophies that the states used in making those soil test calibration and correlation recommendations. And so we're developing FIRST in an attempt to harmonize soil test correlation and calibration data across state lines. We think there's another way to do business, and that's by working across state lines to take little data from states and put it into big data. The Australians did a very similar thing when they built the Better Fertilizer Decision for Crops Interrogators. They had the same problem as the United States, same soil test correlation and calibration, different recommendations. And so by using this tool, it allows the users to put in different types of inputs like soil test method and depth of sampling in the crop they're looking at and the area they're in. And then the tool gives users an answer. And the answer shows the relationship between soil test and percent relative yield. And it shows the level above which, if you have a particular soil test, you should have no expected increase in yield. So we very much decided to use the same model for FIRST. So the goal of FIRST is very simple. It's to advance the accuracy of soil test-based fertilizer recommendations by developing a decision tool that includes a national database. Our intent is to increase transparency of the scientific basis for soil test recommendations, and we have 2 objectives. These 2 objectives have different users in mind. The first objective is to develop a searchable tool that provides soil test calibration graphs with statistical confidence intervals for the area of interest. This is for our general users, such as farmers or fertilizer dealers. Our second objective is to provide data for nutrient management scientists and modelers for in-depth analysis of soil test calibration and correlation data. Obviously, this objective is for researchers, and our hope is that this will lead to better scientific basis around the nutrient management space. Our project started 2 years ago, and we started in 12 southern states. Over the past 2 years, we've grown to include 31 states across the country, 2 not-for-profit organizations, and again, our 2 federal partners. At this point, I want to change gears in this presentation and start focusing on how the first team is working specifically with the PDI team. Clearly around the area of developing a user-friendly and searchable interface or decision tool where data can be added and available for use, the first team is going to be working closely with the PDI team. We had 4 principles of development that were critical to us in developing this user-friendly tool. And let me say that the buy-in from the community we've already done over the past 2 years, and we want to continue to get buy-in from the community until most of the 50 states are represented. It was also critical to us that the software resides in neutral space and have perpetuity. In addition, we want to be able to provide credit for any new data contributing from any users that might be interested in providing information. And so with these 3 principles of development, it seemed a really good fit with AgCross. And the image that you see here shows the AgCross ecosystem that is meeting the principles that we have relative to the development of FIRST. And this graphic envisions how we see FIRST interacting in this space with AgCross. Now, we have a number of activities that the FIRST team is developing. And some of these are just within the FIRST team, but some of them interact with the PDI team. And the ones in yellow are the ones interacting with the PDI team. So the FIRST team is defining a minimum data set. We are trying to engage all of our colleagues and collaborators in defining this minimum data set. We hope to have it ready very soon, within the next 6 months or so. And for trial data to be added to FIRST, it must contain these minimum data that we're developing. In addition, we hope that this minimum data set will be required for any peer-reviewed publications. Once the minimum data set is finalized, the PDI team will be building a field-based data collection tool with the minimum data entries that will allow easy input of field data, and also as well as lab data when the researcher or graduate student is back in the lab. In addition, users will be able to add additional variables beyond the minimum ones provided in case there are other variables that the researcher would like to collect. So we see this as a very valuable data collection tool. In our next activity, we are collecting historical soil test correlation and calibration data for potassium and phosphorus from wherever we can get it. Journal articles, extension reports, gray literature, and other sources. But we're being very careful to only accept quality data. Currently, we have over 1,200 individual studies, and we are developing our database using an Excel spreadsheet. But eventually, these data will be transformed into the relational database within AgCross. The PDI has graciously agreed to provide a graphical analysis of the collected data by nutrient and crop, and this will allow us to see where we are missing data and where we have sufficient data. Lastly, working with PDI, we will move our Excel spreadsheet to the relational database structure within the AgCross ecosystem. And with that, I'd just like to acknowledge all of our wonderful land-grant and federal collaborators and acknowledge the fantastic grant support we've had on this project. Thank you very much.